guys, finally home from work. I shot a video this morning, I didn't have time to upload it, so I thought I'd say hello first. You can see I'm in my very casual clothes. It's been a long day. Wearing my Seiko 5 SNKL41. I was inspired by TGV, the Urban Gentry channel, to do a state of the collection, which I hadn't done before. To me, this is sort of the culmination of my entry-level collecting, which isn't to say I won't ever buy another entry-level piece, but I feel fairly satisfied with what I have, and I would like to move up in the tiers now, which will take a while and don't have the funds for that at the moment. But rather than wasting my money on buying more and more budget pieces, I'm going to wait a little while. I'm well fed finally, and I'm enjoying a bottle of wine. Those of you who don't know, I work in wine. This is a French malbec from the region probably best known for malbec in France, Cahors. Malbec is actually a grape that originates in France, although I think people generally think about it as an Argentinian variety now. It is French, called Cot originally rather than malbec, and the French style, to me, if you ask me, is the way it's supposed to be. It's restrained, it's still fruity, but it's got character outside of just high alcohol and lots of oak. So if you haven't tried French malbec, pick up a good bottle of Cahors. They're not usually very expensive. This bottle in the US retails for about 15 bucks. If you're in Europe, it should be significantly cheaper. Just really, really great wine for the price. Medium minus to light bodied, mineral driven, fruity, but with some spice and some character to it. Great, great wine. Check it out. This particular bottle is from Chateau Combeau-Le-Serre, which is a fairly new producer, farming organically, vinifying in concrete, as opposed to lots of time in oak. It's a really lovely wine for 15 bucks. But this isn't a wine channel, so I'm going to set this aside, take a sip out of my completely inappropriate white wine glass, which is my only not broken glassware at the moment, and then we'll go straight ahead to the state of the collection. So good. Anyway, let's look at my collection. And without further ado, here's my state of the collection. I'm going to go through these watches in the order that they came into my possession. And then I'll explain a little bit about each and about how I wear it and where it is in my collection today. So, of course, I'll start with my watch that I had before I ever collected watches. This is a very simple Timex Ironman digital sports watch. I have no idea what the reference number is. Couldn't really tell you. It's amazing to me that 2 years ago today actually, this was the only watch that I owned. It was one in a long line of running watches that I had bought and used during about 11 years of competitive running, first in middle school, high school, college, then after college. But you sweat a lot, you wear them hard, the batteries die, etc., and you go through a lot of running watches. So this is just the one I had at the time, and the one that I'm still using in the off chance that I exercise these days. It works, it's fine. I went through a phase where I actually bought Soleus running watches and found them to be very disappointing in reliability compared to Timex. So unless I want something like a GPS, which I have a Garmin for somewhere, Timex is tried, trustworthy, just a great simple watch for running and timing and taking splits and things like that. There's no point in spending more than this for a running watch. And I think true runner, like people who've competitively been distance runners, probably are less likely to use something like a G-Shock that's so big and bulky. You want something small and unobtrusive and lightweight. So that's what this is. Put that over there. Moving on from there is my first mechanical watch. I've shown this in a video before. It was a gift from my brother, Sam, after he'd gotten into watches and built his own collection. I think he realized that I was wearing this with like blazers and dress clothes when I was going to readings and things like that as a grad student. He thought I needed a mechanical watch. So I got this little Seiko 5, which has been trustworthy and just a joy to wear. I still wear it all the time. In my previous video I talked about this bold Colorado bread strap on it has brought new life to this watch in my collection, and I've thoroughly enjoyed wearing it recently. Although, as you can tell, it's been a little while as it's not running. I'm going to put this over here. This is for me, largely for some sentimental reasons. It's a keeper watch for sure in my collection. whereas I'm sure I'll go through other running watches in the future. That's just the one I have now. The first non-sports watch I ever bought for myself, which is kind of funny to me now, is this very standard Daniel Wellington. I believe the model is called the Classic St. Maz, although frankly it's hard to tell because they all kind of look the same. I bought this probably just a few months after I got the Seiko 5. It was before I had personally gotten into watches, especially as sort of a mechanical interest rather than just something to wear fashionably. And with the way I dress, when I'm teaching or when I'm reading my own work, it just made a lot of sense to me to have something that looked good with a gray wool blazer or a blue button-down shirt. It was very versatile. You could wear it casually, but it also looked good with my work clothes. I hardly ever wear this now. It just doesn't provide me with any sort of interest or soul the way that some of the mechanical pieces do. And so, I'm not a Daniel Wellington hater. I do think they're probably a little bit more expensive than they have to be, but if you buy them on the gray market, you can get them very cheap. And if you don't care about mechanics, if you're not interested in watches that way, I think you can essentially get this watch for about $80 on Joma Shop. And it's stylish, it looks good. And if that's all you want, and you're not looking to collect, there's no reason to feel ashamed of owning this as a watch. I still think it looks really, really nice. I'm personally a fan of minimalism in a watch style most of the time. So, there will be haters because it's a quartz watch, because people think it's a fashion watch, which may or may not be true. I don't really care all that much about the distinction. If you like this watch, it's reliable, it tells time, and it looks good, why not buy it? But this over here, this is not a keeper. Obviously the problem, of course, is a watch like this doesn't hold its value at all, so I can't really sell it and use that money toward another watch. So for now I'm keeping it. I may re-gift it, I may try to sell it, but I doubt I'd be able to get much more than $50 for it, so I'm not sure it's even worth selling. The next watch in my collection is another gift from my brother. I got this watch for Christmas, and my brother bought me this watch for my birthday. This is an Orient Mego USA. It's the first version. It's also covered in fingerprints, so let me quickly take care of that. It's the first version of the Mego USA before all of the functions had been moved to the main crown and before the hacking and hand winding movement had been added. But it does come with solid end links, although obviously I have it on a NATO, and it comes with sapphire glass. This to me, and I may make a video on this in the future, but this to me is the ultimate beater watch. At the time that I got it, it was my most expensive watch, but at the same time, to me, this term beater watch, whether you love it or hate it, is really just about something that you feel comfortable throwing on in pretty much any situation, whether you're walking to the store, walking the dog, going on a camping trip, going swimming or diving, going to the beach, doing housework. I mean, basically, you can put it on in any situation, you're not worried about it, it's reliable, it's tough, it'll do the job. And I think it's been an amazing watch in that category. Much the same way people talk about their subs, Submariners as being even sort of more attractive once they're beat up and scratched because it shows that they've been used hard and used for purpose. I feel the same way about this watch. It's, I don't know how well you can see it on my terrible phone camera, but it's really dinged up and scratched on the polished parts of the case. And when I had it on the bracelet, the clasp was scratched to pieces too. But I think it just gives it more character. I'm very happy this watch is scratched. Again, apologies for the focusing issues. I love this watch. It's, of all of my watches, probably the least close to my normal personal style. I'm a really little skinny guy. I dress sort of business casual more or less all the time, and this doesn't fit that, but I think regardless of how it's the least close to my style, I love wearing it. I feel comfortable wearing it. If I'm wearing jeans and a t-shirt, if I'm around the house, this is usually the watch I'm turning to. I have it on a blue Sharknado strap, a Bond NATO that I think looks great, and I think because I'm so skinny, this watch wears a little smaller on a NATO than it does on the big chunky Orient bracelet that comes with it. So it suits me that way a little bit more. And again, because this was a gift and because it's the first mechanical watch that really got me interested in following the YouTube channels and researching watches on my own, it's definitely a keeper. I will never sell that watch. Let's see, what did I buy next? Next watch is sort of a fun one. This is a very tiny little old vintage piece. It's a Hamilton, Illinois, and as best as I remember, the short version of the history is that Hamilton purchased Illinois Watch Company, which you can find great high-end vintage Illinois watches online. Some of them are just beautiful, but Hamilton had purchased them while Hamilton was still primarily a United States-based watchmaker. And then, in order to offer a line of slightly more affordable watches branded as Hamilton, Illinois, they started importing early ETA movements, which is funny enough to think that at the time the Swiss movements were considered cheaper and more mass-produced. But that's what it was. They imported ETA movements, threw them in these simple cases, and sold them much more cheaply than the original Hamilton watches or the original Illinois watches. So, well, as far as I understand, Hamilton was still a U.S. company at this time. This has a Swiss movement in it, and I don't think it'll focus with this camera. But if I get up close, no, I don't think it's going to work. Right under the 6, oh, there you go, right under the 6, you can see it says Swiss. It doesn't say Swiss made, it just says Swiss, because it has an ETA, or whatever the early equivalent was of an ETA movement inside. There's a great blog post of someone restoring a very similar model to this, where he goes and looks at the movement and at the branding. Maybe I'll link that below so you can look at it if you're interested. I don't have calipers, so I've never actually measured this watch, but based on its relationship to my other smaller watches, I have to say it's probably 33 to 34 millimeters in diameter, would be my guess. Very small. Honestly, on my tiny little wrists, it looks perfectly fine, the correct scale. It's simple, it's not fancy, it's a little beat up. You can see the crown has a notch out of it. Hesselite crystal, which was very, very scratched. I've buffed it out with polywatch, so unless you look at it directly under the light, it looks fine now. But despite its simplicity, I think that the gilt hands with that amazing patina you can see in the light right now, the sort of mid-century style numerals and indices, and that great red second hand, it's a really nice looking watch. And these can be found very affordably. It seems like a lot of the auctions end up right around the $100 price point if you follow them on eBay. So I think if you look carefully, you can find them. This I don't think has ever been serviced. When I got it, it was on one of those Speedle metal elastic bracelets, which was just covered in gunk, and it was, very dirty and disgusting. And I can't imagine someone had ever serviced this, although I don't know for sure. It keeps good time for the most part. The power reserve, which you can see there, works, but it doesn't seem to always indicate the correct amount of time left on the power reserve. Sometimes I think it gets overwound, or it continues to move past the point where it's actually wound, and thus it'll be a little bit off. But it does work, and I'm sure if it was serviced, which I think would be quite cheap probably, but if it was serviced, I'm sure that it could be fixed and improved. I have this on a 16mm De Beer, what is it called? Tehu, is that how you say it? Tehu lizard grain in Havana, which I thought looked nice when I bought it. It works in a variety of strats, but I think something a little dressy is appropriate for a small vintage piece like this. This is going to join the Daniel Wellington, even though I love it much more, just because I don't know that it's a keeper. I like to only have as many watches that I can actually wear, and if I start bringing in mid-tier pieces, it might get bumped out, and I'd be willing to sell it, assuming I could get a good price for it. After the Hamilton, actually it might have been before, to be honest, I don't exactly remember, they were around the same time. After the Hamilton, I picked up the old standby, the Seiko S&K, I believe 807 refers to the blue dial. It's a baby Flieger. The dial design is a Type B navigator's dial, but functionally speaking, because of its size, its price point, its affordability, I think most people wear it and use it as a field watch, which is certainly where it fits into my collection. Has the venerable 7S26 movement, Comes on a sort of well-made but cheap canvas strap that matches the dial color, so you can get this in beige, military green, blue, or black, and your canvas strap will match that color. I've put it on this padded leather honey brown strap from a Chinese brand called New Life. It used to be lighter. I sweated through it. I just haven't bothered to replace it because I don't care that much right now. But I think it looks good on this style of strap. It looks, I mean, it's it's an aviator strap. Really, it reminds me of like a Breitling or something like that. But it also looks like a field watch, which is how I wear it. Just a great watch for the money. I can't believe you can get these for $50 or $60. It seems just ridiculous that it can be produced at that cost. So if you're looking to start a watch collection, or if you're buying for your children, a niece, a nephew who might be interested in watches, this is a great starting point. It's a reliable, well-made mechanical watch for well under $100. And you can do all sorts of things with NATOs and leather straps and sort of improve the look and make it more interesting. I probably would never sell this because there's no point. I couldn't get enough money. So even though I'm not as attached to it, I'm going to put it in the keeper section. Maybe someday I'll gift it to a kid if I have one, or a friend's child if they're interested in watches. But for now, it's a keeper. My next watch after the Seiko was the watch that today is my number one go-to watch, my everyday wear, the Seiko RB035, which refers to the white dial. There's also, as most of you will know, a black dial version, the 033. I have nothing but positives to say about this watch. It's versatile, it looks really good, it's reliable. Mine, the 6R15 movement inside of it, mine keeps much better time than the factory specs, which seems to be something many people have found. I think for the money, I mean, the finishing, the case design is just beautiful and intricate. I mean, I wear my watches hard, so mine's beat up, and the polishing isn't as good as it looks new, especially on the bezel, as you can see, if I flick it through the light there. But it's a gorgeous watch, really elegant, understated without being boring, and very reliable, and I just love that needle seconds hand. That's really why I went with this Seiko instead of a different one. Just a very attractive piece. Again, this comes on a bracelet. I have it on this sort of preppy, sporty NATO just to dress it down right now, which really is a summer look, but I just felt like wearing it on this. I also have an inexpensive alligator or crocodile or whichever brown leather strap that I think looks great on it for sort of dressier purposes when I'm teaching, things like that. And as has been covered by other reviewers on YouTube, not only are you getting a beautiful watch, reasonably well decorated, well designed, but it's also shock resistant. It's, let's see, I can find it. It's anti-magnetic. Somewhere on here, I can't see it through the viewfinder. I think it's right here. There's a magnet symbol, and it's 100 meters water resistant, made in Japan. Just a beautiful, reliable timepiece, and I think a great first sort of high entry-level or low mid-range piece for most collectors. There's almost no time when you couldn't successfully wear this and have it be appropriate. Let me polish off the crystal a little bit. But yeah, this is definitely the watch I wear most often. I switch the straps out a lot just to make it more versatile, but I wear it all the time. Just a beautiful piece. And it's by far the most expensive watch I purchased for myself. Definitely a keeper. My first real watch purchase. Let's see. The next watch I purchased was a fun little one. This Vosstok Fibia. This is the reference 420059, I believe, which refers both to the dial, the blue Scooby-Doo dial, which to me is what I think of when I think Vosstok. The bezel, which there's a few different varieties. Some have numbers, some have more useful indices, versus this really sort of strange vintage style. And also the case shape. This is the small 39 or 40 millimeter case with the little narrow lugs. There's a couple different styles of cushion case you can get as well, but for my wrist size, this sort of smaller, narrower case made more sense to me. I love this watch. It's flawed. I'm not going to go into it. You can check my video on the perfect 4-piece entry-level collection if you want to know more. But it's just great fun to wear. It looks cool. It's got a lot of character. And you can buy it for $51, $55-ish, which is just amazing to me. It's just a really fun piece. This comes on a hideous, awful bracelet. I wore it for a while on a blue Sharknado strap. And then just for a change of pace, I put it on this very cheap mesh strap that I bought on eBay for like $5, which is not going to be its permanent home probably, but for now, I enjoy wearing it on this. This is probably a keeper for me too, even more so than the Seiko 5. Next is the little quartz Timex Weekender chronograph with the blue dial and the brown leather NATO strap, I should say. I don't have a ton to say about this. I just bought it on a whim, on impulse. It's fun to wear. I don't wear it as much as I probably should, which means I probably shouldn't have bought it. I'm not personally attached to it in any way, especially after the next watch that I'll show you, which is the most recent watch I purchased. I think this is great value for money. It just doesn't, it doesn't hold a prized part of my collection, and thus, for me, it's not a keeper. Again, it's probably something I will gift to somebody or sell it if someone offers me the right price. And finally, the most recent watch I purchased. I don't know the model number or name of this. This is a Swiss vintage chronograph from a brand called Del Bona. As you can see, there's some issues with the chronograph. I'm going to start it just to get the second hand moving out of the way. Anyway, as you can see, it works. It keeps pretty good time from what I can tell. The chronograph is a little bit messed up, and the hand does not always snap back to 12, but sometimes snaps back elsewhere on the dial. I spoke to a watchmaker recently who assured me this wasn't very hard to fix and that parts are still available. For the Wellington caliber 48, which is the movement this uses, is the original two-pusher version of a cam lever chronograph by Wellington, which, as I understand, correct me if I'm wrong, is the predecessor to ETA and Valjoux, and sort of the first mass-produced cam lever chronograph movement. They started with the 47, which is a three-pusher chronograph, so this is the first version with the more traditional two pushers. This was sort of an impulse buy. I found it on eBay from clearly not a watch person for, a true steal of a price. A mechanical Swiss chronograph with original parts in decent shape for considerably less than the price of a Seagull 1963 reissue. I love the vintage style dial. I think it's just beautiful to look at. A lot of character. The domed crystal, of course. I think this is a replacement crystal. There seems to be some glue residue on it, so it seems to me that someone has replaced it. But I don't know for sure. Yeah, it's just a beautiful piece. I don't think it'll stay in my collection permanently. I just really wanted a mechanical chronograph. I wish I wasn't having issues with the chronograph hand because, unfortunately, as most of you will know, servicing a vintage mechanical chronograph is very expensive. I would have to spend quite a bit of money to get it fixed for sure, which is just not something I'm able to or willing to do at this point. So I'll put up with it for now. It still keeps time just fine, and it looks great. This is the strap I used to have in my Vosstok. It is not the final home of this watch, but it has 19mm lugs, and I don't have a 19mm strap. There's one on the way that I'll unbox or envelope soon for you guys, but for now, the watch is on this strap just so I can wear it. Let me take it off. I'll show you more. I'll show you the back. I've replaced the spring bars on this watch. The ones that came with it were falling apart. I took one off and it just broke. Clearly, it had not been taken care of by a watch lover, which is why I was able to get it at just a ridiculously low price. I've seen just watch heads of this watch or very similar watches from Del Bona with missing hands or significant damage going on eBay for about $200 just for the head of the watch, sometimes not running, sometimes without the sub-register hands. And that's insane to me. For what I paid for this and the quality I got out of it, I'm very happy, but I wouldn't pay that same amount essentially for a broken or incomplete version of the watch, especially knowing what it'll cost to fix it. I mean, I think just that's insane. You can find this or other similar sort of defunct Swiss brands, 60s, 70s chronographs online. If you're lucky for around the same price, you're only going to get as good of a price on something like this as I did if you are lucky enough to find it from someone who hasn't done their research and isn't a watch person, because it really shouldn't be possible to buy a working mechanical Swiss chronograph for under $300. It's just like it's crazy. But I got lucky. I was able to buy it, and here we are. I'll have a new strap for this soon, and I'll revisit it then. And if I ever get it serviced, I will let you guys know, and I'll show you the result of the corrected chronograph reset, and then hopefully they'll clean up the residue around the crystal. Anyway, that's my newest purchase. It's actually the second most I've ever spent on a watch, after the SARB. But it is not a keeper. I think eventually I will sell it and move on to other pieces. So here's my collection. I'm interested in knowing what you guys think, where I went wrong, what you would do differently. If I could go back all over again, I probably wouldn't buy the Daniel Wellington, and I wouldn't buy the Timex Weekender. But it was just part of my journey of figuring out what kind of styles I liked, what watches I liked, before I was ready to spend on truly mid-level pieces. That's my collection for now. I have it split into keepers and split into my one sort of purpose-bought watch, and then things that I'm fond of all of these watches, but willing to sell them. I would say my true keepers, the watches that I'm really attached to, are probably these four. I love the S&K, but I don't wear it nearly as often as I used to. Other watches have kind of taken its place. But the SARB's going nowhere. I mean, even if I could afford, a Lange or a Patek, I would still keep the SARB. I love this watch. The two entry-level Japanese watches from my brother as gifts, they're what got me into watch collecting. I wouldn't be making this video without those watches. And then the Vosstok, which I think I'll probably take off this strap before too long and put back on the Blue Shark, but it's just great fun. I really enjoy wearing it. Anyway, this is where I am right now. I'd love to hear your thoughts about where you think I should go from here. I'll make a video in the future about the watches I'm currently lusting after, kind of rank them, consider what I might purchase next when I can afford a higher end watch. It'll be a while, frankly, but I already have, as you can imagine, a list of pieces that really strike my interest, that I'm constantly looking at and researching and looking for on eBay, and Chrono24 and elsewhere. Thanks for watching. Let me know what other kinds of content you'd find useful. I think probably I'll start making wine videos if anyone's interested on a different channel, so I can kind of keep that focus, since that's more of my area of expertise than I want. But I'm going to keep doing lifestyle videos on this channel with watches, other things I purchase and bring in, fashion, everyday items, writing utensils, that kind of thing. Anyway, thanks for watching. I'll see you guys on the next video. Bye.